Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. I do not have pleasure in making this video, and that is because I will use a person that I like very much, and his name is Dr. Jordan Peterson. And I like him very much, and this video is not to criticize him in any way. I'm gonna just use these situations. I have two videos. I'm going to use two situations in which I would think I could demonstrate how great thinkers, some of them wealthy, don't dare to touch certain situations, certain issues, because they're afraid of repercussions. Material repercussions and possibly personal repercussions, career, as I said. And I have two videos. One is 3 minutes, the other one is about 11 minutes. One is with Jordan Peterson. Remember, this is just to show you how people just will not move forward. And because I like Jordan Peterson a lot, I will use something that allegedly Aristotle said. When he was asked one time, I can't remember on what kind of issue, Aristotle. So what do you think, Aristotle, about this issue? Plato claimed this regarding this issue. Are you going to contradict Plato? Plato was your friend, your teacher. What was Plato? And Aristotle says, Plato, I love Plato, but I love truth even more. I am not Aristotle. Jordan Peterson is not Plato. Okay, let's put it aside. So same here. I love Jordan Peterson, but I would like, in the name of showing you something that even great intellectuals choke when they're about to say something about something. So the first interview is this is going to be actually the second interview, is where Jordan Peterson is going to interview Israel's Prime Minister-elect Benjamin Netanyahu. He is going to ask Netanyahu one question. He says he's going to press Netanyahu, but he's not going to press Netanyahu. So that's one of the problems. He refuses to use his intellect. And in order to maybe show you why he refuses to press in any way Netanyahu, I will use the second video, which is going to be the first one actually, is this. And this is a video that was about 5-6 years ago, when Jordan Peterson was asked a question by a person in public about comment on Alexander Solzhenitsyn Gulag Archipelago. Jordan Peterson loves Solzhenitsyn. Jordan Peterson knows the Gulag Archipelago by heart. There is even an audio book narrated by Jordan Peterson of the Gulag Archipelago. He talks in his lectures, when he used to teach in university, about the Gulag Archipelago, but picks and chooses. He pays attention not to use the Merchant of Venice, Shakespeare's. He doesn't want to touch that. The same in the Gulag Archipelago. He's going to avoid certain things that he's going to avoid with Netanyahu as well. I'm going to play this 3-minute video, first one. And the audio is a little bit not that good, but you can read the closed captions here. Okay, I'm going to put it like this, and you're going to hear Peterson's answer, which is right on the bottom, actually.
I was told by Solzhenitsyn eventually. It's 200 years together. Last year, a couple started translating it into English, and they put it online. It included all the chapters that they translated so far. As a Jewish American, I think this book is very important for everyone to read.
So he is a Jewish American, the person who asks the question.
The book Solzhenitsyn documents the overrepresentation of Jewish individuals in the NKVD and in Bolshevik.
NKVD is the secret police, the ones that was responsible for a lot of killing and killings, millions of people. They did the dirty job of Stalin. All right. Would be here like FBI. Let's put it this way, if you really, or something like that. This kind of, obviously not FBI. FBI are good people. Okay.
He claims that the ethnic hatred these individuals have for Christians played a role in the Holodomor.
Holodomor is the genocide that the Ukrainians are trying to, and they have it voted in many countries that the Soviets, not the Russians, because it was the Georgian Stalin, not the Russian Stalin, within Soviet Union, not in Russia, Soviet Russia, okay? They conducted against poor Ukrainians. They killed about 8 million people or so, and it was purposely done to starve the Ukrainians. And Solzhenitsyn writes in his book, Solzhenitsyn had a Nobel Prize for literature. Okay, so he's like not a nobody. So let's go back here. I'm just putting in a context.
Individuals that faced persecution in Ukraine prior to the Bolsheviks' rise to power. These individuals exacted their revenge on the Christian Ukrainian population. The result was the death of 4 million Christians. The line of good and evil cuts through the heart of every human. One cannot simply say
he's reading.
That ethnic group is evil. Every individual must struggle with the good and the evil in their own hearts. That being said, it is important to understand what motivates groups to commit atrocities against other groups, because the previous century has been filled with groups killing other groups. Like the Bolsheviks, Jewish individuals are overrepresented in the ownership and senior staffing. I've got a question. It'll take 1 second. Just like the Bolsheviks, Jewish individuals are overrepresented in the ownership and senior staffing of the U.S. news media.
So that's what Solzhenitsyn said.
Media also is inexplicably hostile. If the current warmongering against Russian Christians is in any way motivated by the same ethnic hatred that ultimately motivated the Holodomor, we must face that responsibly. So here's my question.
So what he says, if they are overrepresented here, and they according to Solzhenitsyn, could have been part of doing that over there, what makes you think that that wouldn't happen?
If Jewish individuals hated Christian Ukrainians enough to starve millions of them to death, could the same thing happen today? Could Jewish individuals use their position of power to seek out revenge against places like Europe and Russia that have a history of expelling Jews?
All right, so that's what the guy said. I asked. He's a Jewish guy reading from that. And now, Jordan Peterson, we're going to have about a minute to walk the stage left and right and to give an answer. I'm going to show you his answer. I'm not doing this to make fun of Jordan Peterson whatsoever. I wouldn't dare that.
Rule 9, it's like...
Rule 9 from his book, I'm guessing. From the 12 Rules of Life or something?
Maybe there's something here that you don't know. And I'm trying to just speak the truth.
See, Peterson is trying to not think how to answer it. I think he's thinking right here, shit, how am I going to avoid this one? And he, I think, makes a mistake here because he's going to claim he can't remember the book. He said, I never read his book. I haven't read this book 2 years together. So it's not the Gulag Archipelago, which he's very familiar with. It's another book. Here's the book where Solzhenitsyn wrote that, not the Gulag Archipelago, but you can look in the Gulag Archipelago as well. Okay, so this is the book, the 200 Years Together, that he mentions. Okay, published in 2002. Okay, not the, because if you don't remember, I will tell you. Alexander Solzhenitsyn defected from Russia, came with all kind of pomp in the 1970s, if I remember, in the United States of America. Everybody was happy how he left. But when he started talking, nobody wanted to listen to Solzhenitsyn anymore because he was very politically incorrect. So read that book. Let's go back to Peterson again at the video. Did you hear that? I can't do it. Well, it's okay. It's okay. We can't always do everything. My point is, he wouldn't touch that. He can't do it. He knows better. He avoids. He doesn't have an opinion, which is fine. Now I'm going to go to this interview conducted by Jordan Peterson with Netanyahu, and Netanyahu will say certain things that make me laugh, but Peterson doesn't catch them, or doesn't want to say anything. I don't know which one it is. It's going to be in English, so I will leave it like this.
I know that there's tremendous constant noise about issues as fundamental as Israel's right to exist, even. And you start by talking about, in your book, you embark on explaining that, at least in some part, by talking about Herzl and his terror that the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe was going to cause a catastrophe, which was obviously a justified terror. Would you be kind enough to walk me and my viewers and listeners through your rationale for the moral justification for Israel, the political justification as well? And I'm going to do what I can to my limited ability, let's say, to push back. I've heard...
He's not going to push back. And he's very capable of doing it.
The arguments of often young people who are more prone to give credence and sympathy, say, to the Palestinian viewpoint. And I'd like to rectify my ignorance and maybe help my viewers and listeners do the same thing. So would it be useful?
Rectify my ignorance is so much humility, intellectual humility, or he pretends.
Start with Herzl?
Well, I'd start, Herzl was what I call our modern Moses, but I'd actually start with the original Moses. The Jewish people have lived in the land of Israel, what is now the state of Israel, have lived here and have been attached to this place for about 3,500 years.
He's not going to mention how they got the land. His chronology is going to start when they got it. He's going to mention just it was something, but then not how they got it. They got it with certain kind of conquest. And Moses was part of that. I see. I guess I got the right point now.
Well, I'd start, Herzl was what I call our modern Moses, but I'd actually start with the original Moses. The Jewish people have lived in the land of Israel, what is now the state of Israel, have lived here and have been attached to this place for about 3,500 years. 3.5 millennia. Now, for the first 2 millennia, roughly, of that time, we were living in what is described in a text commonly known as the Bible. So the Bible describes how the Jewish people lived on this land, were attached to this land, fought off conquerors, sometimes were conquered, but stayed on their land. That continued for a very long time until roughly the 6th, 7th century, actually, after the birth of Christ. Okay? Or
I like how Netanyahu is a politician. He is sneaky. He after the birth of Christ. He doesn't say common era, as I would say. It depends on the audience. So he wants to Peterson, who is a very, I don't know, he never said if he's a Christian or not. He said he is, then he didn't answer. He was like, he uses the Bible very much, but anyway, I'm talking about Netanyahu being sneaky.
roughly for 2,000 years. We were conquered by the Romans. We were conquered by the Byzantines. They did a lot of bad things to us, but they didn't really exile us, contrary to what people think. Okay, the loss of our land actually occurred when the Arab conquest took place in the 7th century. The Arabs burst out from Arabia, and they did something that no other conqueror, not the Romans, not the Byzantines, not the Greeks before them, not Alexander the Great, nobody did before. They actually started taking over the land of the Jewish farmer. They brought in military colonies that took over the land. And gradually, over the next 2 centuries, the Jews became a minority in our land. So it is under the Arab conquest that the Jews lost their homeland. The Arabs were the colonials, the Jews were the natives dispossessed. Well, that happens in history. The Jews were dispossessed, we were flung to the far corners of the earth, suffered unimaginable suffering because we had no homeland. But we didn't disappear, and we never gave up the dream of coming back to our ancestral homeland. So generation after generation, the Jews could be in Warsaw, they could be in Yemen, they could be in China.
What stops them from going now? Just a question. How come you have, I think, in New York City almost as many Jewish people as you would have in Israel? What stops them from going there? War over there? Is that what it is? The Arabs?
And they said, next year in Jerusalem, we'll come back next year in Jerusalem. Well, that was made possible because the Arabs who had conquered the land basically left it barren. They never made it their own. It was a barren land. It really had, practically, it was an empty land. And in the 19th century, the idea of...
He's going to mention two people who visited. He's going to use two people who visited the Holy Land for about 24 hours. And he's going to use that, Mark Twain, as what Mark Twain said, that he didn't see it was a barren land. As if Mark Twain flew over the whole area to see if the whole area was barren. But Peterson somehow doesn't catch that one. You'll see.
Back next year in Jerusalem became a reality. By the way, in part because of Christian Zionist support for the idea of the Great Return. The Jews came back in the 19th century to the land of Israel. The result of this return was that we started building farms, factories, places of employment. Arabs from nearby countries started immigrating, and they call themselves Palestinians. They reconstructed.
Now you understand how the Palestinians came into being, according to Netanyahu? That's what he says.
And said, we've been here for centuries. No, they haven't. They weren't there at all, and they didn't have a national consciousness. We came back, made it.
They didn't have a national consciousness.
And we said, okay, we now will live together. We decided to establish a state.
We live together. We're going to live together. That's the way it was. At that time, yeah. Before 1948, that's kind of like live together.
In 1948, that's 75 years ago. And we said, everybody can live here. The Arabs said, there can't be a Jewish state. You have no right to be here. It's our land. It's not your land. It's been our land for 3,500 years. If you took...
Whose land was before that? Because these guys are very quick to point out that, and the idiots, some idiot Americans themselves, they keep saying, well, we got the land from the Indians. Yeah, and these Indians that were dispossessed by the invading Europeans, we know exactly who, okay? We don't have to say Europeans, some, okay? Those Indians took that land from other Indians, and those other Indians took it from some other Indians. So, if he says that he has that land, that's Jewish land, they took it from the Canaanites. I don't want to hear anybody saying that these guys took the land from the Indians anymore. Because if you agree with what Netanyahu says, that it was our land and that's it, it's ours forever. We took it from the Canaanites, but then I would like you to use the same logic when you talk about the Europeans coming and taking it from the Indians. Because if you cry about the Indians, then you should cry about the Canaanites. But you will not cry for the Canaanites because you're going to deal with Israelis. And the Israelis just, I dare you, triple dare you. Peterson will not even use his intelligence to say anything. But maybe you never know.
Somebody's apartment, knocked them out, dispossessed them, and they never gave up the claim. They said it's our claim. And you left this barren dump, okay?
Someone's apartment being the Israel's apartment, not the Canaanites' apartment, remember? He always starts where he likes to start, from there, not before.
And the families, the progeny of the people you kicked out, came back, rebuilt the house. You cannot come back and tell them, you don't belong here, we're going to kick you out, especially since you're latecomers who come to live in part of the house, which is what the so-called Palestinians are, okay? We say to them, you can live here, we can live here, but it's our land, it's our state. And the reason this conflict...
Why is it their land again? Just asking. I tell you the justification I was given because God gave it to us. All right, so that means if God would give me that land that you say your God gave it to you, we're going to fight forever because our gods gave us that plot of land? Yes. Okay, well. Yeah.
It's our state. And the reason this conflict continues is because the Palestinians, who represent the colonial powers, the Arab conquest.
Look at the bottom of this video over there and see the title. The biggest lie in Palestine versus Israel debate with Prime Minister-elect Benjamin Netanyahu, Jordan Peterson clips. Okay? Can make shit up.
Of the Middle East and beyond, they're saying, you have no right for a Jewish state. Well, we do. If any people has any right to a state, if any people never gave up their dreams of returning to their ancestral home, if any people rebuilt their home from nothing, from barren, wasted land, it's the Jewish people. To tell them, you have suffered more than anyone else. You have never...
You suffered more than everyone else. I think the Romanians suffer more than everybody else. I think the Turks. I think the Indians. No.
Lost your dream of coming back and rebuilding your national life in your ancestral homeland. You have no right to be there. But the Arabs who are trying to destroy you, they have that right. That is a complete perversion of history and also a complete perversion of justice. The Jews belong to this land belongs to the Jews. The Palestinians are free to live here. Next.
Why does it belong to the Jews? Because they conquered it. So the American continent belongs to these guys, the Americans, because they conquered it. Are we going to use the same logic? No?
Among us, but they're not free to demand the dissolution of the Jewish state. That is not justice. That is injustice. That's the shortest lecture I can give you about Jewish history.
Pushback. Yeah.
So why do you think the claim that the Palestinians were somehow there in Israel first and have been displaced in a colonial occupation, let's say, by the Jews, why do you think that idea has gained such cachet, not least in the West?
Because of ignorance? I mean, what do you mean they were here first?
That means you're an idiot. That's why, because of ignorance, people don't know. What do you mean they were first?
You're familiar with the story of Jesus, right? Jesus was a Jewish rabbi living 2,000 years ago. He was a rabbi.
I thought he was just a carpenter. But anyway, if you say so. Turned rabbi.
Galilee. Okay, he came to Jerusalem. He turned the money tables of the tables of the money changers on the Temple Mount. Where did that happen? Did it happen in Tibet? It happened here. Jerusalem was our capital. King David made it our capital.
King David made our capital. Did you read the Old Testament? Look in my books. They took it. Jerusalem was not founded by Israelis. So when they say it's a millennial, whatever, ancestral capital of them, it was not. It was, they conquered Jerusalem. It was called differently. Just look, just read. It's in the good book, and the good book don't lie. Again, he says, Peterson doesn't say shit.
3,000 years ago. So the Jews are here to try to say that they weren't here and that the Palestinians were here thousands of years ago is ridiculous. Anybody who can, you can actually Google this and find out how absurd this thing is. So as far as reinventing ancient history, that is unpardonable, because anybody can find out and understand that the Jews were here for thousands of years, the Palestinians weren't here. As far as modern times are concerned, what the Palestinians have said is, and I write this in my book, and I show it because it's so comical. What they say is, we were here, Palestine was a verdant land in the 19th century, teeming with Palestinians, until the Jews came in, took it over and threw it out. Okay, well, that's what Arafat effectively said in his infamous speech in the United Nations, blaming Zionism, equating Zionism with racism. Well, there's only one problem with that. He said that the Jewish invasion of this verdant Palestinian homeland happened in 1881, okay? The problem with that is that 12 years before, a famous visitor, among hundreds of visitors, named Mark Twain, visited the Holy Land. And he describes a totally different picture.
Mark Twain was that what, in 18 something? So he didn't fly, he probably was on a camel. He was not like right now with a drone go around Israel. So this is his claim. What Mark Twain saw, left and right, which is about what, 9 miles, that's how is the horizon, I think it is, or 9 kilometers. So his surrounding, moving left and right, he said it's a barren land, and that's his argument. I mean, I'm not disputing what Mark Twain saw. I'm just saying that Mark Twain saw a very insignificant portion of the land. That's what I'm saying. And he uses it as the whole land was barren.
He describes Palestine, I'm quoting him,
Palestine
is a vast wasteland. He said, only imagination can grace this barren land with the pomp of circumstance in life. It's just, he said, we travel for a whole day.
For a whole day. That's what, 8 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours?
In the Galilee, we didn't see a human being, one single human being. He said, Jerusalem sits in sackcloth and ashes. And as he was saying that, it's the Jewish return that began building the land. Well, perhaps one could argue, it's obvious that Mark Twain was not in the service of the Jewish state because it didn't exist.
Yeah, that's very funny, but you use one guy who visited on a camel. Okay, the whole Israel, Palestine.
He wasn't in the service of the Jewish lobby because there wasn't any Jewish lobby. He was just reporting what was there.
Yes.
Could there possibly have been a tremendous influx of Palestinians between 1869 and 1881, the year that Arafat says...
So, 1861 or 69, 1869, what means of locomotion Mark Twain had? What, Formula One, going around with a Bugatti, flying with a jet?
Invasion began and destroyed the Palestinian paradise. Well, alas, no, because in the year 1881, another famous visitor visits Israel, and he visits this land, and he writes also his memoirs. Okay, his name was Arthur Penryn Stanley. He was a very famous courtier of Queen Victoria's court. Okay, and he came here on a special visit, and he says, I looked south and I looked north. He says, I'm in Judea, and I see nothing. He says, a barren expanse. And they both express both.
So I look north, I look south, probably east, west, I don't see anything. So again, on the radius of about 9 kilometers, he hasn't seen anything. And Netanyahu uses that eyewitness to claim that the whole thing was barren. Now, if I take you by your little hand, your raccoon hand, and get you, let's say, in one desert, let's say in New Mexico, and we look around, you're not gonna see anybody. All right? And you're gonna write, United States is empty land. That's what this guy tells us about both of these guys. I'm not disputing the fact that they didn't see anybody, and disputing how much they saw. So, and he uses this as arguments. And we have Peterson, Dr. Peterson, who I've been listening very much, a lot. He knows that this guy. I don't think this. What I'm just thinking right now just escaped him, but he's keeping over there quiet like a fish.
And Arthur Penryn Stanley say the same thing. When will the Jews come back and bring this land to life? And the answer is right then. We came back, brought it back to life. There were Arabs living here, but it was, as I say, a barren wasteland. But Arabs began to immigrate naturally because we created a rise in the standard of living that attracted Arabs from neighboring states. Those Arabs are now the descendants of those Arabs who migrated as a result of the Jewish return. Many of them now are considered Palestinians. So what I'm saying...
I read an article in Sputnik yesterday, I think, I can find it, or you can find it, where it says over there how much financial aid, how much aid United States gave to the state of Israel that transformed Israel in what it is. And it's about, 400 billion, I think, or something like that, from 1948. Just United States. If you look at Germany with the reparations, you get to a lot. So if you go by that, if you have an influx, and how much people were over there? I know Romanians, when we were communists, a lot of Romanians were going to Israel to work in construction because they were paid dollars in Israel. They were coming home in the communist time that they had dollars. You were not supposed to have dollars. And they were going over there. They were not those guys. Those guys were not working. I have a lot of stories about what was going on in Israel then. These guys that were coming from labor in Israel, not only in Israel, in Libya as well, in Arab states. They had money and they were paying these guys. And many people from the Eastern European countries went over there and worked as laborers. I know stories, but anyway. So yes, you build it. Yeah, you build it. And the money was coming from where again? My friends, if you know shit, when you listen to these guys, you say, tone it down a little bit. I'm not saying the Israelis did not work or anything. I'm just telling you stories coming from these guys. All right, let's go.
Considered Palestinians. So what I'm saying, and I'm saying this to you, Jordan, and to your audience, there has been a complete fabrication of history. It's the biggest lie of the big lies that have permeated the 20th century and the 21st century, is to say that the Arabs were here before, that is, the Palestinians were here before the Jews, when we were here for thousands of years, that we are the colonials, when in fact it was the Arabs who were the colonials who dispossessed the original natives, and that is the
original native, that is the Jews.
Then we came back to the colonials who dispossessed the original natives, and that is the Jews. Then we...
How are you original natives again? Anyway.
Came back to this land that was laid barren by the Arab conquest, brought it back to life, and allowed Arab immigration, what we call now Palestinian immigration, to come back in. And now they say to us, in unimaginable chutzpah, they say, you don't belong here. They recreate ancient history, they recreate modern history, and this is a lot of hope.
So it was all only against them? Because you said fabricated history. Or many other historical events were fabricated. Or it's just them. Again, I would like to ask him, what other fabrications are there? Can you tell us? Or it's just you, that everybody fabricated against you?
It's ridiculous.
All right, my friends. This was Jordan Peterson's pushback on on Netanyahu, and that was Netanyahu's history or lesson of history with a big lie. And it's only that big lie. Everything else, you listen to him, he's going to tell you the way things are. Again, I didn't make this video to make fun of Jordan Peterson. I wouldn't dare to do that. My point is that he is an intellectual and he's not going to say anything about certain subjects. Why? Don't we have free speech? Well, you see, when you auto-censor, when you censor yourselves, that means you're afraid of what? Of some negative consequences. So how can you have some negative consequences for someone or somebody who doesn't have any power? We're told no power. They're the victims over here. Okay, then why do you censor yourself? Why are you afraid to express what you think about the subject? You should not be afraid to express what you think about the subject and have a debate or a conversation when you can learn certain things. Like right now, I'm listening to Netanyahu and I'm learning certain things. With certain things I'm saying that's garbage, certain things I'm saying, yeah, that's true. But the mere fact that Jordan Peterson, who has, I think he's a millionaire by far now. Great, good for him. He deserves that and much more. He's world renowned. He withstands the attack of this garbage, okay? But on this subject, nope, I can't do it. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.